As you know, September 5th, Deputy Aaron Childress and Deputy Eric Warner and Deputy Bob Bond were involved in an incident in the valley out on Skipworth. Deputy Childress responded to the address to take a domestic violence report. Deputy Childress, en route, realized that he had been at the address prior in June on a similar call of domestic violence. Upon making contact with the victim, Deputy Childress learned that the suspect had assaulted the victim, had stabbed her with a knife, had kept her in the residence against her will until she was able to eventually escape from the residence, at which time she called police. The suspect then stole the victim's vehicle and fled the area. During the time that it took for the deputies to respond, the suspect came back to the area several times, and the victim saw the suspect drive by her residence. As the deputies were taking the reports, Deputy Childress was taking the report, he became concerned that the suspect would return to the residence. He gave the victim a victim witness statement to fill out while he waited outside, and he called for backup in the event that the suspect did come back into the area. During that time, Deputy Childress noticed that the suspect was coming back into the area. The suspect drove at a high rate of speed, turned around in the cul-de-sac, and left the area, at which time Deputy Warner and Deputy Bond began to pursue the suspect in the stolen vehicle. The suspect then fled the vehicle on foot, and it was noticed that he was heading back into the direction of the residence. Deputy Childress went back to the residence, yelled at the victim to lock the doors, at which time he started to proceed to secure the outside of the residence. While doing so, he noticed that two doors of the residence were open, and he became fearful that the suspect had already made it back into the residence. Deputy Childress then entered the backyard, at which time he heard dogs barking in the neighborhood, and he then noticed the suspect pop his head up over the back fence to the west of the residence. Deputy Childress ordered him to stop, advised him he was under arrest, and advised him to approach him. The suspect then jumped over the fence and proceeded to walk towards Deputy Childress. Deputy Childress at this time advised the suspect multiple times to stop and to get on the ground. The suspect refused to do so. The suspect then reached into his pocket and stated that he had a weapon, he had a knife. The suspect covered his hand as he bladed himself, drew the weapon out, and put what the deputies believed at the time was a possible handgun behind his back. The suspect then told the deputies that they were going to have to kill him and that he had a knife. He then proceeded to walk towards the deputies in a very aggressive manner. He got within 8 to 10 feet of Deputy Childress, at which time Deputy Childress saw him move his hand as in coming towards him, and he shot the individual 5 times. During the same time, Deputy Warner had returned back to the residence, and Deputy Warner shot the subject 1 time with his shotgun. During the investigation, it was determined that what the deputy saw in the individual's hands was a set of keys, and those keys have been collected and identified. The deputies were dealing with a domestic violence situation in which the suspect had threatened to kill the victim, had made statements that he was going to kill himself and the victim, that he had possibly armed himself, and that he was armed when he was made contact with. The deputies have been identified, as you know, as Deputy Aaron Childress, He has a 13-year work history with the Sheriff's Office, and Deputy Eric Warner, who has a 23-year employment with the patrol side of the Sheriff's Office and 2 with the Spokane County Jail. Any questions?
Sheriff, you know that the big takeaway that a lot of people are going to get from this is that your deputy shot a man who was not armed.
Yes, and the takeaway of this is the individual said he had a weapon, reached in his pocket, put the object behind his back, advanced on the deputies. The deputies told him to stop. They did not know what it was in his hand, and within 8 to 10 feet of the deputies, he pulled his hand out, and at that point, the deputies don't have time to determine. They already knew that he was potentially armed, and he's very, very close to them at that point.
Can you address family concerns? One is crying excessive force. They're saying 5 shots, 6 shots. They're saying excessive force. And then second, they say, why not use a taser?
Othello, you have an individual that's known to be possibly an armed. He's already assaulted one individual. At that point, he is coming at the deputies, and he's already told the deputies, you're going to have to kill me. The deputies don't know what kind of weapon he has, and it is a lethal force situation. When the deputy fired, he fired the amount of rounds, and the suspect went down. It's up to the prosecutor's office to review this situation at this point.
What's your opinion of how the deputies reacted?
The deputies reacted to a lethal force situation. The individual put his hand in his pockets, he drew it out, put it behind his back, advanced on the deputies, and then within 8 to 10 feet of them, pulled his hand out. He had told them that they were going to have to kill him.
Did both deputies hear the same thing?
Yes.
Sheriff, people always ask the question, you know, he's coming at you and you think maybe he says he has a knife, why don't you shoot in the leg? Why don't you shoot in the arm? It's a question that comes up every time we have one of these instances.
It does, and this isn't Hollywood. This is real life. This is an individual that's coming at put yourself in that deputy's position. I'm this close away from you, and you think I have a weapon. You're not, no one's that good to determine, oh, I better shoot him somewhere. Because if you shoot him in the arm, he can still come and get you. If you shoot him in the leg and he has a gun, he can still shoot you. This is not Hollywood. People don't just automatically go down when they're shot. That's the difference. You know, I think that perhaps maybe Hollywood and the media have painted a unrealistic picture for folks out the citizens, because this is real life. If you make a mistake out on the street, as you just saw 2 months ago, 2 deputies almost lost their lives. This is real life. This isn't Hollywood.
Where was the female victim and the third officer at the time of the shooting?
Pardon?
The female victim and the third officer at the time of the shooting?
The third officer was away from the scene. The female victim, I believe, was at a neighbor's house at that point.
Were there any other witnesses other than the 2 deputies who fired?
No, just the 2 deputies that fired.
Can you talk about this Goldberg's background? I understand he has a criminal history, especially in Utah.
He has a criminal history out of Utah for domestic violence, for drugs, prostitution, and when he was arrested, he had a Utah State DOC identification card, Department of Corrections identification card.
What does that mean?
It means he was on parole.
So those convictions or those arrests?
I didn't check which he has FBI history of showing those.
So you checked NCIC on contacts and arrests, but does NCIC show convictions?
I believe that it does, but I don't remember reading which one.
Later, if there is.
You could.
Now, when you said he possibly had a gun, where did the gun come into play?
The gun came into play in that the suspect continually told the victim to go down to the safe, open the safe so he could get his gun. He held up one bullet and said, "That's all it's going to take." just one bullet. That's where the gun came from. He had made threats to this victim throughout the night that he was going to kill her. Tried to get her to open the safe, she refused to do so. She actually got into a hand-to-hand conflict with him. That's where she received the laceration to her arm. Again, this is a situation in which deputies stepped in to a very violent situation. They were the only thing standing between that victim and that suspect who had already threatened to kill and had already cut that victim. The deputies were doing their jobs. They were protecting that victim.